And a pleasant good evening and welcome. Welcome to another edition of sportsNOLAtv from Toyota New Orleans, where the deals are great. It's Christmas time. You'll get the greatest present you could possibly get if you come to Toyota of New Orleans, I-10 Service Road, New Orleans East, just off of Bullard. Come on by and just tell them you know Ricky Jackson, and they'll take care of you. It's so good to have you with us as we break down the Saints. We'll talk about LSU in a bowl game, high school football, hot seat subject about the national championship, and much more. And we are so pleased to do it with two gentlemen who are ready and willing, and they're about to fire away. Brian Ellie Walsh of sportsNOLA.com, good evening to you.
Dr. Trahan, it's always a pleasure to be here on a beautiful Monday here in New Orleans. We don't have a whole lot of good to talk about when it comes to our professional football team, but we'll get to that, I know.
But we have some positive things to
Yes,
speak
we
about.
do. And you know what, a real big shout out to Jesuit, of course, for their state championship, and we'll get into all that, and Warren Easton getting into the state championship. Outstanding.
Destrehan as well.
Destrehan as well.
There
Absolutely.
you go. And of course, the Hall of Famer himself, the real 57, Ricky Jackson, with us. And Ricky, good evening to you.
All right, good evening, Ken. I tell you, I know how the whole city feels just like I feel. And we was looking for a win yesterday, but we didn't get it. So it kind of put us in a down mood. But I tell you what, it's Christmas time coming up, so we have something to be joyful for.
There you go. Take a positive attitude. The glass is half full. We'll fill it up completely when we return in just a moment to talk about the Saints' 41-10 loss to the Carolina Panthers. And we'll do so as sportsNOLAtv continues from Toyota New Orleans, I-10 Service Road in New Orleans East on WHNO TV 20. Numbers don't lie in this case. Ken Trahan, sportsNOLAtv, tied for the worst loss in the NFL at home this year. Remarkable statistic when you think about the gravity of the season and how deep we are into the season. But that tells you all about where the Saints were as they faced the Carolina Panthers, and the result was ugly. 41-10, Panthers ran all over the Saints and really shut it down in the fourth quarter, or it would have been a lot more. Cam Newton laughed his way to a terrific performance, and the Saints, well, first four-game losing streak at home since the Mike Ditka era in 1999 when Ricky Jackson was, I think, a coach back in that time and place. I just couldn't help but get that in at this point in time. Why not? Because he can speak to it a little bit as we talk about this losing streak. And in fact, let's talk about the game first and foremost. And when you looked at this, Brian, no one could have envisioned this. I can't imagine anyone even picked Carolina, much less pick them to win the game.
You know what, Kenny, we talked about it yesterday in the press box as this game unfolded. You go, all of the veteran wags, if you will, we go back and go, when was the last time you saw a Saints team at home, mind you, lose in this manner? You've got to go long time back under probably Ditka, maybe one of those lean years under Jim Haslett, but I tell you what, there's a lot of layers to this game that I hope we can address in this show.
Well, in 2003, the Colts beat the Saints 55-21 in the Superdome, but the Colts had Peyton Manning and had Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne, and they were really good. Ricky, this Carolina team isn't any good. That's why you have to be really concerned and bothered by what transpired.
Well, it's not that they're any good, Ken. It's just the idea that we home, and we're supposed to take care of business at home, and right now the way the race is coming down to the end, we can't afford a loss. And yesterday was a big setback because even if Atlanta lose the game against Green Bay tonight, they still be in first place because of the head up against us. So we couldn't afford the loss yesterday, and the Saints getting to the point where you only got 3 games left to play. You can't afford any more losses.
All right, Ricky, I want to ask you a question, and I'll let Brian comment, because I know this is something that you can speak to a little bit. I'm not going to ask you to violate a trust, but I know you've had some conversations with Junior Gillette, and he's played pretty well this year, unlike most players on the Saints defense. But he made some comments last week that did not sit well at all with me. I'm 100% sure it didn't sit well with the Saints coaching staff, and I'm 100% sure that it didn't sit well with Saints veteran players who were part of great success here. I understand speaking up for your teammates, but to throw guys under the bus that won a Super Bowl, that was very poorly conceived on his part. What was he thinking? And explain to us, because you know him a little bit, as to what you think was on his mind.
Well, again, I would say it's inexperience. You know, a guy like Junior come from a small football background, and to get to make the NFL. You know what I mean? Guys like that don't usually make the NFL. So to get over here with the Saints and get a chance to make the NFL, and I got a new contract, making good money. I mean, but one thing he had to realize that, you know, teammates is always going to be teammates. You know, you can't never throw another guy under the bus. And I think he learned that yesterday. I think enough people that got on him and let him know that, you know, one thing about teammates, you always stick together.
You know, Junior, and I know Junior a little bit, and I like Junior Gillette. I think in some ways he thought that by making those kind of comments, he was supporting his teammates.
Right.
And he was being a leader. But those are not the way, that's not the way to lead. But let me just throw this out. Yesterday's performance wasn't like a year-end kind of game where you're packing for the post or packing for the offseason. They're in a divisional race, right? They're in the mix to win a playoff spot, and to lay an egg like that, Ricky, it is inexplicable to me that you can play that uninspired football, even at 5-8 or what they were at 5-7. You don't do that
Against a team that had lost 6 straight games, Ricky, a team that was dead to rights.
Well, you know, and you look at that, Cam been hurt the whole season, and he kind of getting healthy now, and you can see the difference when he running that offense and he getting a chance to run the ball and throw the ball consistently, because he normally been throwing the ball so bad. Just like yesterday, the first pass he threw, the fullback made a great catch.
Yeah.
And the next time, the guy was wide open and he missed the throw, and that's when they had a third down and about 12 or 13. The guy would have got a first down or maybe a touchdown. So he been making some bad throws, but yesterday he came to play, and it's just something against the Saints that gets these guys riled up because of the rivalry game. And you can see when they get in the end zone, the big scuffle start, because he was really trying to, you know, throw dirt on the Saints after he scored a touchdown, and the guys was kind of mad and didn't want to go for that.
This was a total composite team effort. They were that bad in every phase except for Saunders returning punts. And the receivers couldn't catch to save your life. I mean, I think 6 drops in the game. They didn't block. They couldn't tackle anybody. Mark Ingram with poor ball security got the ball rolling the wrong way. And then Drew Brees underthrows it open Joe Morgan deep. And I could go on, but Shane Graham missed a field goal. I mean, Brian, this was a total collapse on their part.
Yeah, and again, it's so inexplicable that when you hear players and Coach Payton discuss what the problems may be, they know what the problems are, okay? And there obviously are some issues in the locker room, on the team itself, from guys that are not putting forth. They don't know how to play professionally and what it takes to win at this level. I think there's a lot of that going on, Ricky.
Well,
and Sean's addressing it, and I think some of the real leaders on the team, you know, Zach Streif, Drew Brees, those kind of guys, Rick.
Well, you know what, Ryan, the whole thing come down to being a football person. I mean, you know, Saints have won the Super Bowl, and, you know, our expectation for the Saints to stay at that level. But, you know, it's just like the Giants and all other teams. I mean, Tampa, they won the Super Bowl, and they never get back at that level. You know, Giants won it, they went way down, and they came back and won, and now they're way back down. It's hard to stay up there at that competing level. And right now, the Saints need to address a lot of their players. I mean, that's what it's going to come down to. You need some ballers, and another team have way more ballers than you. I don't care how good you are, what kind of system you run, they're going to have a better team than you. And you can see that a lot of the young teams that they're playing now have better athletes. So the Saints going to have to get better in a lot of positions.
Let's take a look at the worst losses in the Sean Payton regime, because this one clearly stacks up there. It's tied for the worst loss that the Saints suffered under Sean Payton. You can see some of the others, remembering the Seahawks game of last year, of course, in Seattle, the Broncos game in Denver in the throwaway 2012 season, the Panthers, of course, who have done that to the Saints a few times, and then the Cowboys, of course, this year as well. But the one difference, Brian, is that all the others, with the exception of yesterday's game, were on the road.
Right.
This was at home against a bad team.
And Kenny, you addressed it too. And if you look at the opponents that they lost to, there's reasons why they lost to those teams the way they did. Peyton Manning, the Bounty Gate season, a Super Bowl season in Seattle. There's real reasons why you could understand the Saints losing like that, but not yesterday. You brought it up. Carolina's a very inferior team this year. And then secondly, the Saints are playing, they're tied for the divisional lead. So there's really no excuse for it at all.
No sense of urgency at all. Do you see Sean Payton making changes, Ricky?
Well, I mean, you know, really don't have the personnel to really make a whole lot of changes, Ken. You kind of got to stick with what you got now. A lot of them guys making a whole lot of money. Those guys just got to get off their butt and play football. I mean, the money that they making, Ken, it just, they got to get out and play football. You can't change right now. Ain't a lot of guys to change. Saints don't have a lot of personnel back up that better than the guys who playing now. So ain't much you can do but get those guys to try to play or let them know next year we got to go on a different route.
The Saints have a lot of problems, but none bigger than their running defense. Their rush defense has just been awful. Everybody knows their secondary is bad, but look at the Saints' rush defense this year and the yards allowed this year by the New Orleans Saints in these games. Good in the wins, bad in the losses, but when you give up 190, 186, 215, 271, you have 4 guys, Brian, that have rushed for 148 yards or more against you in a single season. I mean, that's old day numbers, you know what I mean? When everybody ran the ball all the time.
You're right, Kenny. I think of 2 possessions that really kind of, to me, captured the essence of yesterday's effort, or lack thereof, was the Saints 3 and out to open the second half. Okay, they're trailing 24-3 at half. You would have thought, okay, I know Peyton and his staff were in these guys' faces at least trying to motivate them. They come out and it wasn't just a 3 and out, Ricky. It was a horrible 3 and out. And then they punt, give it back to the Panthers. First down, 10 at the 31. Next play, Jonathan Stewart ran untouched 69 yards for a touchdown. And we talked about it. The effort to try and catch him wasn't even there.
Well, I mean, and you got to look at, too, you got to look at the scheme you're playing, too. I mean, you're either playing a run or you're playing a pass scheme. I mean, so that's what happens a lot of times. When you're in a pass defense and they running the ball, everybody get out of whack and the guy have a big scene and he hit. And that's what it seemed like it was yesterday. But, you know what I mean, if you play a base defense where now you're playing the run first and then you're playing the pass, it'll be a lot different.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and that's what happened yesterday. Guys was all out of position, out of whack, and the guy had a chance to hit a big run.
Well, there's no doubt that this is a football team that's in a state of emergency of sorts, because when you look at this team at 5-8, it's the worst they've been under Sean Payton at this stage of a season. When you look at this team and the way they're playing, you throw the Pittsburgh game out because that was an aberration.
Yeah.
And you look at who they are and what they've been the last several weeks. Otherwise, Brian, they're a bad football team.
I know, and you know, you want to kind of camouflage that because they tease you, right, with performances against Pittsburgh and performances on the road against Carolina, so they kind of tease you. But the bottom line is, Kenny, it's not a good football team.
sportsNOLaTv is presented by Premier Automotive. We would like to thank Troy Duhon and the entire Premier Automotive Group family for supporting the community. Today, we are at Premier Toyota of New Orleans at 13150 I-10 Service Road in New Orleans East. Visit the website at toyotaofneworleans.com and stay tuned for Toyota special deals throughout the show. Back to talk NFL in just a moment on sportsNOLaTv on WHNO TV 20. The NFL, as we get deep into the season now, and some of the results eye-catching. When you see Oakland beating San Francisco, you really wonder about the future of Jim Harbaugh with the 49ers, which probably wasn't very secure anyway, among a lot of others that were pretty interesting too. So, Brian, as we look at the results of this past weekend, what's the most impressive thing to you and maybe the most depressing thing?
Well, Kenny, I tell you what, normally I would probably move away from it, but really the Saints loss and the way that they lost at home, to me, is one of the most surprising things over the weekend. Maybe the most surprising thing. But the other 2 games that caught my attention were Arizona got back. They got their 10th win. They beat a good Kansas City team. And then the other game was, escapes me now. St. Louis is a team you do not want to play, my friends, okay? The Rams are going to be reckoned with as they come down the stretch here. That's a good football team.
Yeah, back-to-back shutouts,
Yeah.
but again, probably too little too late
Yes.
in the division they play in, Ricky.
Right. Well, I mean, I like the Rams, but I really like the way Arizona keep staying up, because Frisco thought they had a chance, but look like to me, the way Arizona playing, Frisco really don't have a chance to get back.
It'll be difficult.
They would have to lose one more game, and I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think they'll lose all their games.
Well, to me, the Pittsburgh Steelers bouncing back and just whipping the Cincinnati Bengals tells you that the Steelers obviously took the Saints lightly. How else can you possibly explain what happened in Pittsburgh a week ago? And I think you also have to take a look at the Minnesota Vikings, and Teddy Bridgewater is going to be a pretty good player. They played some close games that they lost. Now they're winning on a pretty consistent basis, playing at a college facility, building a new place with a new quarterback and a pretty nice foundation, and looking past Adrian Peterson. I think they've kind of turned the page, and I think maybe they're heading in the right direction at this point in time. And then the Detroit Lions, they just continue to hang right there and tough. If they get any consistency out of their offense, and I know that sounds strange because coming into the season, Brian, you would have thought that offense is what you're talking about with Detroit, but their defense is really good.
I mean, they're making Green Bay work for whatever they get out of the NFC North. And I think, Kenny, there's 6 NFC teams that have at least 9 wins, which normally, right, you would think the Saints would be in that number, and they're not.
But I'll tell you another thing, Brian. You talk a lot about Carolina.
Yeah.
But, coming into the season, Carolina supposed to have a pretty decent team. And you can see where the quarterback getting healthy and the team looking a lot better now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Carolina trying to make that run. I mean, if Atlanta stumble or the Saints stumble, I mean, a couple of wins, Carolina will be right back in first place. So, I mean,
Let me ask you guys this. Do the Saints have a Kelvin Benjamin?
No, and
No,
they
don't.
could have picked him.
Okay.
They could have picked him later on
Yeah.
in the first round.
Yeah.
Sure.
Do they have a Mike Evans? And these are 2 guys, okay? I mean, look, you hit it, I think, Ricky, early on in the show, is that there's holes that they've got to fill here in the offseason, and they've got salary cap problems.
Well, they do, and it's going to be interesting to see just where they go. By the way, the Seattle Seahawks are alive and well,
Yes.
with a real chance to repeat as Super Bowl champions. Statement win at Philadelphia, shutting down that fast break offense. Let's take a look at the NFC South standings. It's now a 3-team race again, thanks to the Saints playing the Panthers right back into it. Falcons at 5-7, Packers coming up, Saints at 5-8, and now the Panthers just a half game behind the Saints. Tampa Bay at 2-11, and the schedules down the stretch. We talked about this last week, Ricky, and thought the Saints had the advantage with schedules, but hey, we thought they'd beat Carolina easily, and they not only lost, they got killed, so much for that.
Well, I mean, it looked like to me, Carolina got the easy schedule now. I mean, they got Tampa, they should beat Tampa. Cleveland probably going to have Manziel playing, so they got a chance to play against a rookie quarterback. And Atlanta, you know what I mean? If they beat Atlanta, I mean, they got easy schedule. They can win all their ball games. So right now, either one of those teams win all 3 games, that's probably be the better team.
You know, you look at a couple of the Falcons and Saints, and now the Panthers. I mean, don't count the Panthers out here. I mean, who knows what this division's going to provide us.
Right.
But the Saints, if the Saints win, they're going to have to win it on the road, which is crazy, isn't it, Kenny? When you think about they've got a longer winning streak on the road now than they do at home. They've lost 4 on the road. 4 at home and now 2 on the road.
But you can't take Chicago light neither.
No, I
mean,
agree.
Chicago,
I
those
agree
guys
with you.
up there, they fighting for a win, and they hungry for a win. They whole cities all over their team, like they just can't play football.
I agree.
So they're going to come out fighting. So the Saints are going to have to really be ready for this ball
Well, if
game.
the Saints win out, they're going to win the division. It's that simple. Anything less, and they're in peril. Well, there was a streak of note that came to an end in the NFL on Sunday, and we all know about the streak that Drew Brees had with consecutive games with a touchdown pass. Well, the streak of Peyton Manning comes to an end, and he comes up short. There's the number. Drew Brees still holds the record because Manning did not throw a touchdown in Denver's win over Buffalo. His streak ends at 51. Brady, of course, had a streak that was 52, and Brees still holds the record at 54 straight games in succession with a touchdown pass, Brian.
You know, and I was wondering if his current streak was going to end yesterday too, until he finally hooked up with Benjamin Watson to keep the streak going. But you know, when you think about it, that's a heck of a streak. You know, and I'm sure like you guys, I thought Peyton was going to get it.
And you had to be happy for Benjamin Watson.
Yes.
At least because he's one of the class acts. He's one of the really good guys, Ricky, on that football team that's good in the locker room.
Well, I mean, you know, I was happy for him, and Saints got 10 points. I mean, I wasn't happy for that. I mean, I don't go by all those records and stuff, you know what I mean? I go by win and losses. So, I mean, that's what counted to me yesterday, how the Saints played. I mean, the guy can throw all these touchdowns, but when the game's over with, it don't really make a difference to me.
Ricky, you know what I hope happens, and you being a leader when you played and continue to be a leader in the community, I hope a gentleman like Benjamin Watson takes Junior Gillette and tells him how it should be done. This is where leadership, in my opinion, the guys like Benjamin Watson can step forward and make things happen in the locker room.
Well, Brian,
Ricky.
a lot of times, Brian, you get those guys $10 million, $15 million,
right?
And you get a guy like Watson making $500,000. Them guys, you know, they don't really listen to you. So, you know, the pay scale is so unbalanced in the NFL. To the guys making the money, they ain't listen to the guys that ain't making no money. I mean,
that's a very good point too, because there is a pecking order. It's time now for our sportsNOLA.com trivia question of the evening, where Lenny tries to stump the panel and stump you as well. Sunday's game was only the 5th time since 1980 the Saints have allowed an opponent to rush for at least 270 yards. That's right, only 5 times. What opponent holds the record for the most rushing yards against the Saints? Is it the Los Angeles Rams, the St. Louis Cardinals, talk about teams that don't exist anymore, the Buffalo Bills, or the Atlanta Falcons? I believe I know the answer.
I think I do.
Do you? We'll have the answer when we return, and we'll talk about college football playoffs and whether or not they ended up with the right teams when we return on sportsNOLA TV from Toyota of New Orleans in the East. Our sportsNOLA.com trivia question of the evening surrounds running the football against the New Orleans Saints. What opponent holds the record for the most rushing yards against the Saints? Is it A, the Los Angeles Rams, B, the St. Louis Cardinals, C, the Buffalo Bills, or D, the Atlanta Falcons? We're all in agreement that it's A, and we're right, the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams rushed for 340 yards against the Saints in 1973. Can you say Lawrence McCutcheon? I think I told you that during the break, Brian, so all over that.
Yep.
I guess I've been watching Saints football for a long time. Why not? It's all good. That's our trivia question. It's always fun. It's also fun to take you on our hot seat journey, where we put Brian Ellie Walsh on the hot seat with a hot topic of the day, and we debate it. And our topic today is very simple. Did the College Football Selection Committee get the Final Four right, or did they not? Brian, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Doctor, as always. Yeah, I think unequivocally they definitely got it right. And I had my doubts, but based on what we knew last week when TCU was number 3, Florida State was 4, but you had the semblance of, if Ohio State took care of business, won the Big Ten championship with their 3rd string quarterback, you know, that they would get it right. And I think they did get it right. I think that they got the rankings right, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I like the way this thing is developed. Do they need to tweak it? Certainly they do. But there would always be discussion, and there's nothing wrong with a healthy debate, as we all have here on the set. If it's a 4-team playoff, there's going to be the 5th and 6th place team, in this case Baylor and TCU, complaining that they should be included. If it was an 8-team playoff, it'd be the 9th and 10th place teams. But you know what? They got it right, and let's continue to tweak it. And I think this will send, you know, they can send out a message to those teams. Why doesn't the Big 12 have a championship game? I bet they do pretty soon.
Yeah, and I'm just like you, Brian. They got to get a championship game. I mean, you can't say that we co-champs and not trying to get
Right.
in. And that's what happened to them
Right.
yesterday. Well, Ohio State, they showed you that they one of the top 4 teams up there. And I think that Alabama going to have their hands full with Ohio State, because to me, Ohio State got a complete team. And they got one of the best coaches in
Yes.
college football. And I think Martin did a great job up there. You can see he's been building that team the last 3 or 4 years. He's been getting the right pieces in place, and you can see now that they're playing great football.
Right, agreed. You know, the way that they beat, the way that Ohio State, I've seen Wisconsin, you guys have seen Wisconsin. Wisconsin's a good football team, okay? And they manhandled them 59-0. I am curious, it's hypothetical, and we always deal in hypothetical situations. I'm just curious what might have happened had Ohio State, if they'd lost, we understand what would have happened. If they'd have struggled to win, won by a touchdown, do they get in at 4? I don't know if they do.
Oh, they take TCU.
Probably
They
so.
probably took
Probably
TCU.
so.
They was ranked 3rd. You know, they've been up there for the last 2 or 3 weeks, so they probably would have kept them up there. But yesterday, Saturday, when Ohio State won the game like they did, you can see that Wisconsin had a running back, had almost 2,300 yards.
I know.
And I mean, and the Heisman people were waiting on him to go out and have 200 yards and have 2,600 yards and break the record. And, you know, he'd have been right for the Heisman, but they shot him down.
You know, some media sites have taken the BCS rankings the way it used to be, and they incorporated all the information in, and they came up with that Florida State would have been 2, Alabama would have been 1 in even the BCS rankings. And I guess I'm old school, Kenny. I guess I'm old school in that, boy, until you're beaten, you're a national champion. You've won 29 consecutive games. You know, I guess if there's one thing I'd like to tweak, Florida State didn't get the respect that as an old guy, that I would have given them, okay?
Well, Brian, you know, you got to go back to their quarterback situation. He had a whole lot of negative stuff off field and stuff, so people really was more like, you know, sanctioning them with that. You know, a lot of that had to come. Then they won a lot of close games at the end. They got lucky. They never did. They had about 4 games they beat people by 12 points total.
Right.
So, you know, it wasn't like they just went out and killed people this year. So I think they was in a great spot, you know, even though they undefeated, but it was the way they went undefeated.
I didn't like Coach Briles for Baylor talking about, I didn't like his defense for why, you know, Baylor belonged. He was talking about there was nobody that represented the South or the Southeast on that 12-person committee, except for Condoleezza Rice. Archie was off, and I know Archie's going to get healthy and he's going to come back on and he can lend. But Coach Briles, I thought that was kind of a lame
my whole thing is too, man, those guys fighting for the kids, you know what I mean? So when you're fighting for the kids, you're going to stand up and say whatever you think that's right, that need to be motivated for the kids. So his whole thing was, he worried about his university and his kids. He wasn't worried about all the outsiders surrounding him.
Well, it's time to render a verdict. They got it right. The right 4 teams are playing. The system was a bit ridiculous, though. How in the world can TCU drop out after winning by, I don't know, 5,000 points in their final game of the year? What does that tell you? Well, it tells you one thing. It tells you that everything that led up to it meant absolutely nothing. The positioning was something that was made for television. That's all, because ultimately they were going to end up with who they ended up with, and they were going to end up with the power conference teams and a glamour matchup. And is there politics involved in? You bet there is. When you look at the difference between the television sets for an Ohio State as compared to the television sets for a TCU, it's not comparable, not in any way. There is no doubt that ratings will jump through the ceiling with Ohio State in rather than TCU, and I do think that plays a role. As for the process itself, while they got it right, it makes no sense. I don't have any problem with Coach Briles saying what he said at all. He beat TCU. What other criteria do you have? You're not playing a conference championship game. Look at Oregon. They lost to Arizona, but they had a chance to avenge that and make themselves look even better. And they did, given the opportunity. That's not something that Baylor had a chance to do. What if they had a championship game and Baylor would have beaten TCU? Would Baylor have been left out again? I think they would have. I think Ohio State would have gotten in. Now, on Ohio State's defense, I would not like to have seen them been frozen out because they're down to their 3rd quarterback. That's the argument about, well, we're going to penalize them because of injuries. No, you don't penalize teams because of injuries. You go based on accomplishment and what you were able to do during the course of the year. And from my perspective, they earned where they got. So I think they got it right in the final analysis. I just didn't like the made-for-TV process. When we return in just a moment, LSU, bowl games, New Orleans Bowl, Sugar Bowl, and more on sportsNOLAtv. Premier Automotive Group is making a difference in our community. Troy and Tracy Duhon founded Giving Hope NOLA to serve those in need in the greater New Orleans area. Giving Hope NOLA operates the food pantry of New Orleans, which has fed thousands of people hot meals since it opened in 2013. We specifically target both children and the elderly in New Orleans East. Giving Hope NOLA and Premier Automotive is making a difference. Learn more by visiting givinghopenOLA.org. Ken Trahan, sportsNOLAtv from Toyota of New Orleans, I-10 Service Road in New Orleans East. And we're glad you've joined us. And the bowls are set. The All-State Sugar Bowl is a national semifinal matchup with the Ohio State Buckeyes, and we just discussed, at 12-1 against the Alabama Crimson Tide at 12-1. January 1st, 7:30 in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. Winner goes to the national championship game. And Brian, Alabama still has a bad taste in its mouth from being in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome last season when Oklahoma whipped them. And obviously, they're back to the scene of the crime. Remember, they laid an egg against Utah in a Sugar Bowl previously, too. In between, they beat LSU in a national championship game.
Well, you know, I think the incentive to perform and win is going to be there, no doubt about it. And of course, everyone's looking at the coaching matchup, Urban Meyer against Nick Saban, and it certainly is a sexy coaching matchup. So I hope to be part of the coverage, and I'm looking forward to the game. I think it's going to be a great semi-game.
Rick?
And I'll tell you, you know, Alabama, they play for championship. And if nothing on the line, like Brian's saying, you don't see the same, you know, enthusiasm that they have. But for this national championship game, Ohio State going to come in. It's going to be a great game. I think that this game here is going to be the national championship game. Whoever wins this, I think, will go on and take it.
Well, I think Alabama has an edge in this game. I think in the region they have an edge with fan base in all likelihood. I think the familiarity with the facility, they definitely have an edge. As I mentioned, they've been here many times in recent years. And in addition to that, I think they have an edge on the field. I think they're playing very well. And I think they're a little bit better than Ohio State. If Blake Sims doesn't turn the ball over, he's playing very well. Their running backs are excellent. Their offensive line, very good. Their defense has gotten better. You can still hurt them throwing the ball, but can Ohio State really throw it with the third-team quarterback? I think we're fixing to find out. So I think it's a really good matchup. It'll be a great ratings matchup. I certainly like Alabama to win the football game ultimately and get to the national championship game. And the other matchup, I think you have to like Oregon playing in their own region in the Rose Bowl. Florida State has to go across the country. But in Florida State's defense, they've won every game they've played as the defending national champions with a bullseye on their chest. And how they could possibly even be discussed as being the 4 is beyond me. They're undefeated, folks. They beat everybody. I don't care what the margins were. This isn't a beauty contest. It's all about winning. It always has been. If margins matter, then TCU would be playing in the national semifinals. They had a pretty good margin, didn't they? Didn't matter. Well, that is the All-State Sugar Bowl. Of course, you have LSU in a bowl game, too, and the Tigers are going to the Music City Bowl to take on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Notre Dame started off like a house of fire, Brian, and then they fell apart down the stretch. They've lost 4 straight games. LSU very pedestrian on offense. Defense getting better. They can certainly run the ball. And no doubt LSU will be ready to play since the matchup is against Notre Dame. An afternoon game, by the way.
You know, I like this matchup. I think if you're looking for incentives to get teams up to play in bowl games that are meaningless in a sense, this is a good matchup because Notre Dame's, regardless of what people think of this team or the school, it still makes people watch. And this is a game that Les Miles can certainly get his team to get up for. I like LSU big time in this game.
Well, LSU beat Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl when Jamarcus Russell was there. They beat him in the Independence Bowl prior to that in Shreveport. So they've been down this road before, right?
Yeah, and I mean, LSU had a better team there. You know, Marcus went the first round, first pick, so, you know, they was a lot better. But right now, what LSU got to work on is finding them a quarterback, seeing do they have a quarterback on their team right now. And I think that's what this practice in this bowl going to be more, that see do they have anybody on their staff that can quarterback right now.
You know, Les Miles was talking about how they're going to spend those 15 or so practices before this game. You know, he didn't go as far as to say it's going to be an open competition for that starting job, but you got the feeling that it isn't dictated that Jennings is going to be the guy.
Right, he's looking for a quarterback.
Right, yeah. And that's good. I think that's what you need to do. This is that's the beauty about playing these bowl games, Ken, you know that, is that you get these extra practice sessions.
Right, and in college you can do that because you got 100 and something players on the team, but in the NFL you only got 53 players, so you can't do it like that.
Right.
Well, I think it's going to be interesting. I think LSU will be motivated to play, and I think it's also good for them that they go to a different venue. Nashville's not one they've played in before, so I think that will make it interesting for the players too. And then there is the R&L Carriers New Orleans Bowl, or should we rename it the Ragin' Cajun Classic? Because University of Louisiana Lafayette is coming back at 8-4 to take on the Nevada Wolfpack. That's right, not the Loyola Wolfpack, not the North Carolina State Wolfpack, the Nevada Wolfpack coming here at 7-5. And again, this is a morning start on December 20th at 10 a.m., but you know the Cajuns will bring fans. They always do. Cody Fajardo's been outstanding for Nevada. Broadway good for Louisiana Lafayette. And the Cajuns played much better in the second half of the season than they did early on, Brian.
You know, Ken, it does seem like every year we're welcoming the Ragin' Cajuns back into our town, but you know, they bring so many great rabid fans in. They spend a lot of money in our city, and if they want to come back every year, let's have them.
And I'll tell you, I mean, just playing a team from Nevada, I mean, you know, you worry about how many people that they're going to bring. You know that Louisiana Lafayette going to have them 30, 40,000.
Right.
So, you know, in order for the game to be crowded, the other team got to at least bring about 15 or 20, and it'll be a great game.
Right, I agree. You know, well, for them, and I like what Mark's done up there. At least, you know, they started off, they played some quality competition to open the season. They were struggling, and they regrouped and made a good season. But it's probably not the kind of season Coach Hudspeth would have liked. But they're back in a bowl. They're going to get some money for the school and the conference, and the kids. You know, it's a win-win situation for everybody.
And let's not forget Louisiana Tech. They're going to play in Dallas as well. They got their bowl bid that they should have gotten last year, and they're going where they thought they were going last year. And it's a good regional game for them based upon location. So kudos to the Bulldogs as well. We'll take a time out here. When we return in just a moment, high school football championships galore. We'll talk about that and more as Sports NOLA TV continues from Toyota of New Orleans on WHNO. sportsNOLA.com is the best site on the web. Louisiana Sports 24/7, your home for prep sports, where you'll find everything pertaining to the state championships of last weekend and this coming weekend in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. But it's all prep sports all the time, plus Saints, LSU, Tulane, Pelicans, you name it. We've got it at sportsNOLA.com. We hope you will visit. We know you will like it because Brian Alley Walsh writes there. sportsNOLA.com, Sports NOLA TV. Ken Trahan with you. It's time now to focus on our Prep Player of the Week for the R&L Carriers New Orleans Bowl Greater New Orleans Quarterback Club. SportsNOLA.com and WHNO TV. And our Prep Player of the Week for the metro area for Week 14 is Jesuit senior running back Charles Jackson. And why not? Jackson against the vaunted John Curtis defense with 16 carries, 142 yards, as Jesuit wins their first state championship since 1960, beating the top-seeded Patriots 17-14. Hard to run for those kind of yards against Curtis. Charles Jackson did. Congratulations to Jackson. Congratulations to the Blue Jays. Special accomplishment. And when we look back at the state championship games for weekend one, the select divisions, it was Jesuit 17-14 over John Curtis in Division II. University High and Baton Rouge defeated Parkview Baptist in a rematch game, 46-32. And another rematch game of a year ago in the semifinals. Great game. It was Calvary Baptist, Shea Patterson over Catholic New Iberia, and Jason Pellerin 27-24. And in Division IV, a blowout. Powerhouse Ouachita Christian prevails over Southern Lab by the score of 52-6. So the first weekend of games over with. Another weekend to come. The format stinks, and to have to do it 2 straight weekends is ridiculous, but there's hope in the future. Talking to Vic Bonifay, president of the association, it looks like that won't happen again. But as a result, we do have games this weekend, and we look forward to those as well. 5 state championship games on the non-select side. 5A, Acadia and Destrehan, Saturday night, 7 p.m. live on WGSO, 9:90 a.m. Class 4A, Saturday at 3:30. Warren Easton and Neville, that's also live on WGSO, 9:90 a.m. At noon, the 3A championship A meet The Warriors are back against top-seeded Livonia. And then in 2A, these are the Friday games. The late game at 8 p.m. in 2A is Kinder and Manny, rematch game of a year ago. And in 1A at 4:30, another rematch game of a year ago, Haynesville and Mangum. You end up with rematches largely because of this split format, Brian. You won't see those super sexy matchups of, boy, who would have won it all if that team on the select side played the team on the non-select side.
Kenny, I don't blame you one iota. How can you, when we talk about these games, and it's about the kids, I understand that, but it's hard not to put in your politically correct feelings about, please don't do this again, change it if you can. But I am interested in both the top division games. I'm interested in Destrehan continuing its unbeaten season, and I'm pulling for Warren Easton. You talk about Jesuit, Warren Easton, two of the most storied high school programs in this city. And the years that it's been between state championships, I had no idea, Kenny, being from the north, but I had no idea. And it's a wonderful story. It truly is.
Well, I'm born and raised, and my dad was part of that. He
Yeah.
went to Jesuit and told me all the stories about Jesuit. Warren Easton when he was young.
Yeah.
That was a big rivalry. And now to see both of them in this position now is truly remarkable.
Yeah.
And you got here in the 70s, and your first job was covering prep sports,
Yeah.
and we used to see each other frequently, so you got to understand it pretty quickly. And Ricky, obviously it's a special time for all these young men, regardless of what the adults have done to their classes and made 9 championships out of this. It's still special for the kids.
Right, and I mean, just like me, when I came here, I moved to Destrehan, so, you know, I'm always going to be looking at Destrehan, but just to see that Curtis always had a great team, and for Jesuit to go beat Curtis, that was a lot special to those young kids, I know, and they haven't won since 1960, so I know how that whole program feels. But, you know, just looking at how the programs, what they got to go through, like you're saying, Brian, it make you think of the Big 12.
Yeah.
I mean, they know that they need to revive the system, and, you know, you hope that those guys who's over that get that right.
Yeah, when you think about Jesuit, we're talking, like you said, Kenny and Rick, 54 years, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
54.
I mean, the
1960.
legacies, the generations, and fathers can experience this now with their grandkids, I assume, right? I mean, it's a great story. It's both for Warren Easton as well.
All right, we're going to talk all about the Saints and the Bears next week since it's a Monday night game, but just a 10-second overview.
Okay.
Just real quick, Brian, yes, no, win, no, maybe, no.
Kenny, I'm going to stay with the Saints. I mean, you know, I'm going to stay with the Saints. Don't ask me why.
Okay, and we'll get into it and expound on it next week. But Brian, I mean, Ricky, obviously a pair of 5-8 teams.
Yeah.
And obviously Chicago's a tough place to play this time of the year, but the weather doesn't look bad at this point looking ahead.
Well, and then they lost their great receiver, too. I don't think he'll play against us. So we really, I don't think they have a great replacement for him. So we got advantage right there. We got to take care of business in this ball game.
Gentlemen, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much. Great job, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, buddy.
When we return in just a moment, we'll talk with Will Lewis, the general manager of Toyota of New Orleans, as Sports NOLA TV continues on WHNO TV 20. Sports NOLA TV is brought to you by Toyota of New Orleans. Go to toyotaofneworleans.com. On the I-10 service road just off of Bullard in New Orleans East, where the deals are fantastic, the people are great, and you need to come check out some of those deals, including the Sienna, the Camry Hybrid, the Sequoia. There's deals galore, great Christmas presents. Think about nothing else. This is the place to be. Toyota of New Orleans, I-10 service road in New Orleans East. And it's my pleasure to welcome to the show Will Lewis, the general manager of Toyota New Orleans. Will, great to have you with us.
Hey, great to be here.
Merry Christmas
Well, thank
to
you guys for coming.
Yeah, my pleasure. You got some Christmas cheer for people. You got some really good deals, don't you?
We have some great deals this going on this month. We have the 2015 Toyota Corolla on sale now for $16,995 with 0% financing. We have the 2015 Toyota Camry on sale now for $21,995. In addition to that, we have a galore of vans outside. We have the all-new 2015 Toyota Sienna, marked down right now for $26,995 with 0% for 60 months.
Pretty good stuff. The Camry Hybrid has been a vehicle that's caught fire too in recent times.
Yes, it has. The all-new Camry Hybrid, redesigned for 2015. We can't keep them in stock.
Yeah, and that's because the mileage is great and the product is proven.
And the price is right. And we're dealing that Toyota New Orleans. All Christmas long, we got the savings. Come drive a little, save a lot. That's our slogan.
Drive a little, save a lot. I like it. You mentioned the Sequoia. Tell us a little bit more about that vehicle.
The all-new Sequoia for 2015 comes in 3 different trim levels. The SR5 starting at a price of $36,995, and we don't have any specials on it, but you can get it right now up to 72 months at 1.9.
And you have a luxury vehicle that I really like. It's very nice on the high end.
The luxury vehicle that we have is going to be the Avalon, Toyota Avalon. You can also get that in the hybrid as well. Avalon starting right now $28,995.
That's pretty cheap too when you consider what kind of vehicle that is, because top end can be in the mid-40s, right?
And the good thing about the Avalon, it qualifies for that 0% finance for 60 months as well.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is Toyota, which is a proven product, a continual, consistent product, and really a staple of the Premier Automotive family. It's been around as long as any.
This is Toyota of New Orleans was actually Troy's first dealership, so this is baby. So he has a lot of passion for the Toyota brand and for Toyota of New Orleans, because this was his numero uno. So he wants to see us do well, and we do well in the city.
And while we've been here, you know, the business has been brisk. It's been good. That's the way it's been, I would imagine, for the past couple of weeks.
You know, it's been a little slow, but I don't know, maybe y'all brought the crowd in for us today, so we appreciate y'all coming. We might have to get y'all a little bit more special on Saturday. So
it's all good.
Y'all brought a nice little traffic in for us today.
And
so
then the Premier Automotive family and Troy Duhan and Giving Hope NOLA, these are all special, aren't they?
You know, Troy's philosophy is profit with a purpose. So for every car we sell, we make a donation to worthy organizations in the community, you know. Not just making money, but giving it back and spreading it a little bit.
And especially for the kids in New Orleans East, that's really passionate on Troy's heart, and obviously it's passionate on Will's heart too. Will, a pleasure. Thanks for being with us. We appreciate it. Thanks for having us too.
Thank you.
And Merry Christmas to you and yours.
Merry Christmas to you.
That's going to do it for us for another edition of Sports NOLA TV. I'm Ken Trahan. Thanks for joining us. Be a good sport. God bless you one and all. Rounding third and heading home. So long.